Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the Moco Business Buzz here on the Marketing 101 for Small Business Owners podcast. I'm your host, Philippa Channer, and I'm excited to keep this series going with inviting and interviewing local business owners who are doing great things in our community. So today I have Jennifer McCloskey. She's an author and a great friend I met recently. So I'm excited to hear more about what you've got to tell us today.
Honored. Thank you so much for having me, Philippa. I'm honored. I wrote a book called Put Comfortable Shoes in My Coffin, and I am marketing the book and trying to get the word out there about the book. And my idea is just to really let people see really what the book's about, and if they are interested in picking up a copy or in reading it and gaining some insight for them on just little inspirational nuggets that help them find ways to make it through their day maybe a little bit easier, maybe ideas on how to gain stick-to-itiveness or to gain insight on something. And my book is just 60 short stories about my family, my friends, people that have done inspirational things. And they're very short stories. The whole book itself, each story is about 3 pages long. And it's just these little concepts and ideas of people who did things brilliantly that really kind of makes me say, I wish I could do that. That was a great idea. I should have instilled that. And I want people to grab this and they can see that there is hope and there is light. And when things go wrong, there is this beautiful way of pulling yourself out of it. And that's really my goal for the book. And that's the things that I'm hoping that I can market to people so that they can see that it's available.
Okay. Did you have a particular audience in mind when you were putting these stories together, like women, entrepreneurs, or just anybody who needs
When I
inspiration?
first wrote it, I sent this out to a bunch of people to review it for me and to ask who is the audience. And everybody
Okay.
came back and said, this is a huge audience. This has got something for everyone. And I was honored because there are lots of different messages in the stories. So it's really for adults to look at and say, yes, I want to do that in my life. But it's also for younger people, for young adults, and for even children, because there are some stories in there where people find something within themselves to work through something. And again, there's some funny stories in there. There's some heartfelt stories in there. There's some stories about my father in his military experience. One in particular about when he was working for the National Guard. And he was a pilot and he was working at the airport, and all the electricity went out at the airport. And so they were calling all the pilots that were lined up to come into the airport and said, you're going to have to divert and go somewhere else because,
Yeah.
quite honestly, we don't have runway lights. And so it was getting dark, and this one young gentleman called and said, look, I know you're diverting everybody, but I got to be honest with you, I have no fuel left. So I have to land there at your airport no matter what. I have to. And so my father and his team, they kind of decide, what can we do? We can't curl up in a ball and just feel terrible for this guy. We've got to do something. So they took all
Yeah.
the Jeeps that they had and they lined them up on the runway with the lights kind of angled so it wasn't in the pilot's eyes. And then they held this big sheet. They went to the local barracks and got a big sheet and hung that at the end of the runway and shined lights on that as well so that the pilot would know where the end of the runway was. And this pilot landed perfectly right in the middle of the runway and jumped out of his Jeep and shook the hands of all the men that had been there to help guide him and land him safely. And those stories are kind of, even a young child can see the beauty and find a way. He'll
Yeah.
find a way to make something happen. Even if I'm at school and I don't know how to do this kind of math, find a way. There's stories about my own children in there, and hopefully it will give others ideas and a little bit of inspiration to help them see that there is a way out of conflict and there is a path forward and that good things can come from things that are tough. And so, yes, it is
Yeah.
for all audiences and for anyone who wants a good story to help inspire them.
That is awesome. I love it. I absolutely love it. I have, just listening to you, I have some marketing ideas, but let's start with some of the stuff that you've done. So tell me about a marketing success you've had so far with this journey
Okay.
of creating and getting your book out
Some of the
there.
pros I found that is social media, that being able to let people know what's out there. I think For me, it was simply, I would just put the words. I would say, hey, check out my new book. It's about this. There's stories about this, very general. And so in the beginning, people that knew me, people that wanted to hear more about the stories, I think that was a great success for me. That was, people were able to say, hey, I want to give this a try based on your description, based on some of the things that you say you intend for the book to accomplish.
It's awesome. That's why I love family and friends. Their support
They
when you
are.
need it
They're
is
the
always so
best.
good. So that's the best place to start and get some feedback, get that fan base
Mhm.
growing. So that's awesome. All right. So what about some struggles you've had? Something you've tried that either didn't work,
Mhm.
or maybe something you've wanted to try and just didn't know how to get it started.
Okay, for me, some of the struggles were social media. The exact same thing that I loved was the same thing that I struggled with because I'm not
Okay.
on social media a lot. I don't have a gazillion followers. And I would love to put like little video clips or read a story, one of the stories so people can feel it. Or my book is on Audible, or put an Audible clip on there. I don't know how to do any of that. And I think that would help. And I think
Yeah.
the same thing that I love about social media is the same thing that is tricky for me on social media. And I need assistance in finding ways to maybe garner some of the book reviews that I've gotten and let people share those and share that on social media. Or someone who has written to me and said, oh, this story really touched home with me and here's why. And sharing some of that as well. I need to get better at that. I need to learn how to do that. I need to know what works and how to spread that to even a bigger audience as well. That's what I
Hmm.
need help with,
Yes.
Philippa.
So what it sounds like you need help with is not only just, I think the main thing is what makes social media so overwhelming is because there's so many different ways to
Yeah.
do it. And it can seem like a very overwhelming time
Yes.
commitment, especially when you don't have a plan on paper.
Right.
It can seem just very
Yeah.
daunting. And so one of the first things I suggest is first is to come up with a schedule of what you feel like would work for you, how frequent you
I
would
like
like
it.
to put social media content out there. It could be once a week, it could be once every other week. Whatever that rhythm is for you, you need to find, okay, what can I comfortably work with? That's not going to seem overwhelming. So once you get that on paper, you can kind of lay out a calendar and say, okay, great. That means if let's say it's once a week, I've got about 4, maybe 5 weeks of post I want to do. You can pick a day of the week, like if Thursday is a comfortable day
Love
for you.
it.
Okay, every Thursday I want to write something. Right. So now you've got a visual of the slots you want to fill. The next you want to do is think about the ways you want to share content. You've got images, you've got
Yeah.
videos, you can do a little selfie video. Like you're saying, you can read the story. One of the ideas I thought of when you were talking, which I would love to, because these stories are based off of people you know, if these people are still around, the Lord willing, maybe you do like an interview with them. I shared your story in my book, and then you can do like a little interview like this, or if you're in person in town, set up a camera, and you don't necessarily repeat what's the story about, but now you get to dive deeper, especially for people who have read the story. To get to hear and see the person the story was actually about makes the experience even more, holistic. So yeah, you just pick all those different ways you feel like, okay, yes, I could do a selfie video, I could do a few graphics. Maybe I can, out of the 60 stories, I can pull 5 of the people that are here in town. We can do a video. So now you just fill in kind of like, okay, this week I want this week to be this type of video. So now you can visually see the type of content you need to make. It's less overwhelming because now you have a plan, and now you just need to see, okay, what resources do I need to have at my disposal to make all these happen? Hopefully that
I
helps.
love that idea and it helps so much. And there are so many stories that have little pieces that I just didn't put in that like happen the next day. Or even there's a story about my mom and dad. My father was away in the service and he arranged to meet my mom at Christmas time in Florida when he was finishing up boot camp. And this, as I tell the story, they missed each other. My dad missed picking her up from the train, and her train was delayed, and there was this big crisscross. They missed each other. And what I didn't realize in the story, as the story prevails, you have to read it to find out if they catch up. Of course they do, because I'm here. But as the story prevailed, I didn't find out until later because my mom was my co-author. She helped me at 98 years old, 98 years young, she used to
Oh,
say, help me
yes.
write and fill in the gaps of the story. But she told me later, after I had written the book, that it was not only was it the day before Christmas that they had connected, but my father had to leave the next day on Christmas Day because he was
Oh,
actually plans changed and they called
yeah,
his troop out of town. And there's just so many little pieces of so many of the stories that I did not include, but that really add. You're right, they add
yeah,
to it. And by having the people
yeah,
there to give their insights, oh, I love that idea. Absolutely love it.
yeah. And I think too would be good is as the momentum gets building and people start generating, your audience starts building, is maybe thinking of, okay, do we add another book with 60 new stories, and maybe you can have a campaign when, do you have a story you want to share,
I love it.
and you can start holding like interviews where you can start meeting people, hearing their stories, and kind of vetting them to be in the next edition of this book. There's so much potential with
I
it.
love it so much. Brilliant,
Yeah,
brilliant idea.
yeah.
Brilliant.
And then the last thing I saw too, as you were describing who the book is for and how it touches so many different generations and different people, is this would be a good book to have. Like, so for me and my family, I've got three young children. They're now 10, 12, 14. And what we do is, well, we try to do every night. I'll admit it doesn't happen every night, but I try to have a time where we are um, sitting down. I call it a devotion time. So we are a Christian family, so we'll have like a little scripture we'll read, or sometimes we'll just listen to a story. So this would be a great book to add to our experience, to where one of us could read the story out loud and then we just talk about it, what we thought about it. But that's a great family thing to do, like maybe once a week. There's 60
Mhm.
stories once a week, a little bit over a year. Families have something they can do together every Sunday night, whenever.
I love it. I love it. I can't tell you how many people tell me, and this is like the greatest compliment you can give me. I bought a copy for my children. And that is exactly what it's for. And that's why I wrote the book. So that my kids were coming home from school and they were telling me, oh, we read this book. It was really painful. All these people that go through these tragedies. I'm like, well, how did they get through them? Well, they didn't. And I was like, what? The book should be like motivating and powerful, that make you realize
Yeah,
you can get through things. And so I wrote the book so that my kids could see that it's been done before, and that everybody goes through tough times, but it's what you do with that information. And that's
yeah,
exactly what it's about. It's about sharing things that other people have done. They may not be movie stars or great. Those people are amazing as well, but these are just everyday heroes that have done
yes,
things that we can all do. And that is
yeah.
exactly the goal, is to teach the next generation that there is
Yes,
hope
that we
and
will
that
have.
there is power
Yeah.
in everything that they do and the way they
Yes,
look at
yes.
things and their attitude.
And it doesn't end with a challenge. There's no challenge we can't
That's
overcome
right.
with the right tools, the right resources, the
That's
right
right.
people, and each scenario is
You're
different.
right.
That's so awesome. Well, how can people learn more about the book if they want to buy it, if they want to just meet you? Where would you like them to connect with you?
Thank you. It's available on Amazon and anywhere books are sold. And it's also on Kindle, and it's also available on Audible, read by me. And there's a version in Spanish as well. And again, it's called Put Comfortable Shoes in My Coffin. And it's written by me and my mom. And it is
That's
60 short
awesome.
stories on hopefully some fun and meaningful stories for everyday life.
Awesome. Well, I'm definitely going to check it out. I do audiobooks, so I would
Perfect.
love to sit there and listen to your voice tell me stories all the time. So I will do that now.
Perfect.
So
Perfect.
so exciting. Thank you so much for taking your time to come and share with us. I really appreciate it.
Philippa, thanks for having me. I'm honored to be here. Thank you for taking the time with me. Thank you.